Hey, all, a little unusual start, I know, but we had a bit of a technical malfunction. Who am I trying to kid? I forgot to hit the record button on the camera I usually use to record my side of the conversation with James. And before I realized it, the review was finished. When I realized it, I uttered a few choice words, which, much to my chagrin, my 11-year-old son was in earshot of. I'll be living that down for a while now. Anyhow, what you're going to see is my laptop version, which I wasn't anticipating using. It's not at the best angle. And anyhow, I just wanted to give you a heads up that this is not the quality we usually like to have in our reviews. I just wanted to apologize because I certainly don't want it to affect the review or any impression you have of Something in the Dirt, which is a movie we both highly recommend and enjoy. Anyhow, on with the show.
You ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive Movie Reviews with my friend Steve Hackman and myself, James Marsh. This week we are talking Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead's Something in the Dirt.
Hey, but before we begin, if you haven't already subscribed to Deep Dive Movie Reviews, it'd be a great favor to us if you went ahead and hit the subscribe button. While you're there, go ahead and like the video, and that helps the algorithm get us out to a wider audience. And just as a reminder, Deep Dive Movie Reviews does contain spoilers, so you have been warned. James, let's talk Something in the Dirt.
Okay, yeah, so this is a new film from a sort of writer, director, actor pair, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, and they specialize in sort of low budget, high concept sci-fi horror weirdness sort of indie movies, and they've been particularly successful at it so far, so much so that they're now attracting attention from the big leagues. They directed a couple of episodes of Moon Knight for Disney Plus, and I think they're now the lead directors on season 2 of Loki coming up, which is fascinating to see what they do and see them go so far with that. So this is a film that they shot over COVID, and that's abundantly clear right from the offset. It's about two guys who are new neighbors. You've got Levi, played by Justin Benson, and John, played by Aaron Moorhead. Levi wakes up in this new apartment, and he meets John, who lives downstairs. Levi seems to be doing he does kind of odd jobs. He works at a bar. He also sort of volunteers at a shelter of some kind down the hill, not quite sure what's been going on, where he's been coming from. But then slowly, as he lets things slip, you realize that he's been in jail for something, and that he might be an addict or a recovering addict of some kind, and he's got some certain things going on. Meanwhile, John, who lives downstairs, seems at first to be far more kind of put together. We learn that he was a maths teacher. He's gay, but out of a relationship at the moment. But also that he is part of this kind of apocalyptic cult church thing.
Yeah.
Which becomes increasingly more relevant as it goes on. Suffice to say that Levi begins to notice strange things happening in their apartment, and they agree to start filming them. Objects are moving, emitting strange reflected light from sort of dubious sources. Something is getting really hot in the cupboard, and so they agreed to kind of do a project together and to make a documentary about it. So this is actually, we were just talking about Nope, and this is another film about amateur filmmaking, if you like, which is a kind of an interesting coincidence. And they uncover something that they can't quite explain. And then the film is kind of told from sort of after the fact as a kind of pseudo documentary about their discoveries. But then they start breaking the fourth wall with that almost, where you realize partway through that they're recreating the scenes that you think that we're watching firsthand. That they're actually recreations, and they're playing themselves in the recreations, and so the notions of fact and fiction become increasingly muddied as the thing goes on.
It's a bit of a twist on the found footage trope that you see. So, and I kind of love the idea, because this film really does play fast and loose with the idea of what is truth and what is our perceived truth, and what is real for me might not be real for you, and the dots that we connect that bind reality around us together are going to be different from different people. Let me just start out by saying I love this movie. I'd never heard of either one of these two guys before. I had not seen any of their work, and so I was coming in with just fresh eyes, fresh face. And I've said before in other reviews, I have a predisposition for something that could almost be done on a stage, with very minimalist type of setup, and with a lot of great dialogue and a lot of discussion and chemistry between characters. And that's what this film is in abundance. It is, by and large, two guys talking in a room for an hour and 45 minutes. And I mean, they go out a bit and they go on some research missions here or there to film this or that or other thing. But by and large, the anomaly they're doing their docuseries on is in this one particular apartment room that Levi happens to inhabit at the time. And so like I said, I'll kind of come right out and say how much I enjoyed this film. I love both of these actors, both not only as writer-directors, but even though increasingly in the film, the relationship, which at first seems fairly put together, and this is going to work because they have this shared goal and a shared ambition. We're going to discover this mystery. We're going to discover the cause of this mystery, and we're going to get famous doing it. It's like any two guys in a bar. I got a great idea. What if we did this? Yeah, we'll do this, and we'll do this. And so it kind of has that kind of element. But then as their relationships become a little more frayed, as paranoia builds, as they begin to each suspect the other person's motives, realizing these are very flawed characters. And as the gloss of their initial enthusiasm begins to wane, some of the realities are there. But having said that, coming back to my original thought, these two guys have amazing chemistry together. So even though they're playing characters on screen that really don't gel together,
right?
You can tell when you tell me, oh yeah, they're really friends in real life that enjoy making films together. I'm like, well, of course they are.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant sort of little sort of subversive game that they're playing with their audience, because I don't know their entire backstory, but they've certainly been making movies together for over a decade, and they always make movies together, and they tend to often be sometimes in the movies as well. This is not the first time that they have sort of starred in their own movie, but then they're playing these characters who don't know each other at all. And the more that they get to know each other, the more they realize how little they know about each other, and how little they actually like each other, and how little they have in common. There's also sort of these kind of little running jokes that even if you don't have all the information, you kind of get that they're making jokes about sort of the indie movie making scene, and how crews are thrown together because they think they're on the same page and that they have the same idea, but then very quickly there are all of these needling little sort of contradictions and inconsistencies. They start kind of sniping at one another for, what do you mean you didn't have the camera on? Why didn't you have the camera? Oh, you were doing something without me? Why were you shooting without me? Why weren't you shooting without me? And there are all of these little kind of
sabotaging this. Yes.
What are you hoping to achieve out of all of this? And that you can tell that all of that is drawn from years and years of experience, either firsthand or with collaborators or with colleagues and contemporaries in the industry. That it's very sort of keenly observed that everybody who might come into these sort of no budget or low budget productions with so much enthusiasm and an idea about what they want to do, but when it actually comes down to actually doing it, they're completely flaky and ill prepared and all the rest of it. And there's so much of that kind of going on as well. But mainly what I liked about this is it's about ideas, and it's very much drawing from the kind of podcast world that has really exploded over the last couple of years of COVID, that it's all about every possible conspiracy theory and sort of puzzle within the history of the country and architecture and the different influences of Fibonacci sequences and all of these other kind of sort of numbers, and they just throw it all at the wall to see what sticks, because they're literally throwing it all at this unexplainable anomaly that's going on in their apartment, and they're like, maybe it's related to this, maybe it's related to this, and they just go at it.
And there's enough connective hooks so that it almost seems possible. And so one conspiracy or one piece of information about a conspiracy leads to this, which leads to this. Oh, we found this redacted file. Oh, why was it redacted? Well, this connects to this. It made me think of the line in National Treasure with Nicolas Cage and John Voight, where John Voight plays the father, and he tells him at one point Nicolas Cage says, "Oh, we have to, we finally found the next step. We can go." And the dad goes, "There's always going to be a next step. Don't you understand this? This never ends. There's
Right.
always a new hook or a new thing that's going to be." And this film brilliantly plays with that idea that it shoots a cannon of ideas out there and lets these guys, like Easter eggs, go and try to connect all of these divergent ideas in their attempt to solve this weird anomaly that's happened in their apartment. And the fact that they can build a whole movie around that, I just want to tip my hat to the creativity there, because it was fantastic.
And outside of this little bubble, which, as we mentioned, was being filmed during COVID I believe, in Benson's own apartment. There is a suggestion that there's something bigger, something threatening going on outside. There are kind of forest fires, which is a thing that happens in LA with some degree of frequency. But whenever they go outside, there's like a low flying aircraft or a police helicopter, or there's something, or smoke coming up from the horizon. Something is going on, something bigger than them. That the suggestion is that if we wanted to tie this to that, we could, because we can tie this to anything.
Right.
And that throughout, it's literally like, we're going to throw every conspiracy theory we can, and then we're going to cherry pick the pieces that we can connect and discard all the rest. And it's a nice little satire on all of those kind of true crime, conspiracy theory, podcast shows, what have you, where they can make it fit by ignoring as many of the facts as they dig up. And
right.
I just thought it was smart enough, but sort of self-knowing and playful enough to walk that line pretty carefully, without falling into too many of the traps and being guilty of too many of the same things that it's trying to sort of satirize, if you like.
And I think one of the ways they're able to accomplish that is they don't take it too seriously, because there's a lot of really funny humor in this film as well. I mean, there is sometimes I legitimately laughed out loud. It was funny at times. There's a line, I mean, coming from the education background, there's a line, I think, where Aaron Moorhead plays John the mathematician. And he says, while he was teaching, he said, "I adjusted the curve so much for those students, I should have been fired." And I'm thinking, I've done that.
Nice.
Maybe not fired, but I've definitely, at times, to help students, I've probably bent a few of the rules in order to help them achieve. And I don't know, when he said that line, and there was a few other examples of that I just thought the humor in this kept it grounded in reality, and made it a much more accessible film, because it was just a bunch of ideas thrown out there and we're trying to connect them. But there was something about, like I said, the chemistry of the characters and the nonstop humor. It's like you'd mentioned, obviously these guys are drawing from a wellspring of their own experiences working together, and they can just kind of throw, where it's appropriate, they can just choose, like picking clothes out of the closet, what experience or what little line or something that's occurred, we just plop it in here, and it worked.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how many of those sequences where it's just the two of them riffing off each other were improvised, or how much of it was scripted ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the movie works as well as it does. It's not to do with all the theories that they managed to pull together and string along, because you're like, okay, sure, I've heard some of these before, and I know I get these kind of ideas. It works because of these two characters. And because they're not necessarily likable characters. In fact, I don't think either of them is particularly likable.
No,
but there's a chemistry that they have between each other that makes their conversations and their interactions incredibly entertaining.
Yes.
And you're just drawn in to the situation. It's almost like a kind of a situation comedy, quite literally, where you've just thrown these two oddballs, who don't know each other and shouldn't get along, together in a situation where they have to kind of deal with each other as much as deal with this thing, and that stuff works so well, and it's only because I think that Benson and Moorhead know each other so well. But it's only because of that they are able to create a situation that we become absorbed in.
Yes, and absorbed I was, and for another little point too of why it was a personal connection for me was, I love that they chose to have Aaron Moorhead's character John be an evangelical Christian from a
Right.
from like a kind of an apocalyptic cult.
Mm.
And like my background, I wouldn't classify it as an apocalyptic cult, but it definitely had,
Aren't they all?
the Antichrist is coming, and there's going to be 7 years of tribulation as the whole Left Behind thing. I mean, that was my background. And what's interesting is he at first appears to be the more centered one, the more grounded one.
Right.
But as the movie progresses, you realize this guy is really messed up. And that's my experience with a lot of people from that, that background, is there is a facade of this Jesus grounding. And yet when you scratch the surface, it's a nut house. And that's what you see with this character. Once you scratch the surface, he's divorced. His life isn't together because he's a messed up character. And but he is religious, and obviously that plays into the way he interacts with the anomaly as well.
Yeah, I mean that gives him a superiority over Levi immediately. I mean, Levi on the surface seems to be barely holding it together, eking a sort of a very meager existence out, living on the fringes. But you realize that actually, he's fine, really. I mean, well, not fine. I mean, he's a little bit.
But once Levi starts to realize that John is actually as messed up, if not more messed up than he is, the power dynamics begin to shift. Because it definitely starts up to say a teacher student. That's not what it is, but there definitely is a power dynamic where John is the more stable one, and Levi is the one who's kind of gleaning and relying on John to kind of set the stage for everything they're going to do. But as the movie progresses, those power dynamics shift a little bit, and Levi begins to realize, yeah, John's as screwed up as I am.
Oh, if not more so, and it culminates in the ending. It culminates in the ending where, while we're unsure exactly what happened, there's a suggestion that John has kind of withheld information or has done something without Levi's knowledge that has resulted in Levi's death. Maybe,
it's a little ambiguous, or Levi was raptured.
Yes, there's a possibility that that's what happened, but there's also a suggestion that John kind of knew it was going to happen and didn't quite do all he could have done. But that's what I always think is kind of fun about their movies, is that they're very sort of simple and straightforward on the surface, very sort of efficiently handled and efficiently put together, but it's just ram-packed with ideas and with absurd characters. And they're great at taking big ideas and big genre movies, sci-fi, horror, whatever it happens to be, but then executing it in a very sort of certainly very, very modestly budgeted way, very sort of contained way.
And I think that's why, you were saying in a previous review, one of your top 10 films we're going to be looking at as we draw to the close of 2022, our top 10 films. This is one of my top 10 films.
Oh, great.
I put this as one of my top 10 films. And again, I think it's because I went in with no expectations. And a lot of times when you go in and your expectations are exceeded, it just leaves you with this great taste in your mouth. And I just, you mentioned that I think you've interviewed the either Justin.
No, I've met them. I know them a little bit. I've met them a bunch of times on the festival circuit. There's a couple of festivals, one in Korea and one in Switzerland, for example, that they are invited to pretty much every year, especially when they've got a new movie. And I tend to go there. So our paths have crossed a bunch of times.
Well, let's get him on a show and ask him about these ideas.
I can ask.
Well, now that they're directing Loki, it might be outside of our.
That's it. That window may have passed.
Closed.
They're big time now.
Well, James, as we draw to a close, obviously we've got to score something in the dirt. What instrument are we going to use?
Strange floating quartz ashtrays or whatever it was.
Yes. What was that thing? It wasn't.
I think was it an ashtray? Well, they used it as an ashtray.
Yeah, something like Yeah. Very well. Let me go first. This was definitely my a movie I've definitely said how much I've enjoyed. I just, again, I enjoyed this movie so much. I love the minimalist approach. I love the dialogue. I love the chemistry between the characters. I love you used it in the Nope review, swinging for the fences. This movie, in my eyes, this one swings for the fences. It's like we're just going to throw it all out there and just see how these two guys kind of just fall apart as they try to engage in something that's much bigger than either one of them. And so and I also love the idea that even though none of these conspiracies really connect, that a lot of these things are imagined, there's the very real mystery that's out there. You're never left with a feeling that, oh, this is just a naturalist world and these guys are making shit up all the time. No, there was real mystery. It's just like many of the ways we approach religion. I feel there's real mystery out there. There's real God. There's real universe. There's something bigger than our natural creation. But we usually stumbling over trying to connect dots that probably are not connecting. And we end up hurting ourselves and those around us. And so, again, when I watch a movie that kind of forces me to re-examine the religious background I came out of and rethink some things, and yet leaves me with a real positive, feel-good experience, I'm definitely going to be, looking at this very favorably. So that's a long way of saying I'm giving this 4.5 out of 5
nice
stars. I love this film. I can't wait to see some of the other works by these two men. And now I'll be looking for anything they do going forward.
Well, that's excellent, and I'll be sure to recommend their other stuff to you and point you in the right direction for that. This was great. This does everything that I like about their work. It's fascinating to watch them play characters that couldn't be more different certainly from the versions of them that I have met, and so that's a lot of fun. Sort of seeing them really sell you on these personas where you're like, wow, no, I don't think you are like that person, but you're convincing me that you are, and that's scary. And I just love the way that they are able to do so much with so little, and to create so much and to put all these ideas in your head. And it's interesting what you were saying there about how the ideas don't, the conspiracy theories and how they're not real. And I think that it's great because it's about trying to use a limited human vocabulary to describe something beyond that, something that we literally don't have the words to describe. And so therefore it's inevitable that we keep circling back on ourselves because we only have a finite number of words and letters and numbers and symbols to draw from. And so if you pull on enough threads, they're just going to end up circling back on one another because that's all we have to use. And this film does a really good job of putting that into a very sort of small contained space where we can enjoy a little mystery. And I think it works so well because of the characters that they create, which aren't likable. I don't like them.
No.
Levi and John, I do not like them, but I thoroughly enjoyed spending time with them. So I am going to give it 4 floating quartzy crystalline abstract what was it, ashtrays out of 5.
Yes. Fantastic. That was even higher than I thought you were going to give. I thought, but you don't give halves. And
I don't give halves. I don't give halves.
Go higher than 3. So yeah.
And I think I really appreciated, and I really fed off of your enthusiasm for it as well. That was great to see, and I will certainly introduce you to some of their other movies.
Fantastic. Well, again, that's what James and I felt about Something in the Dirt. But what did you think of it? Have you seen it? I mean, obviously you have if you were listening to us, but
I would hope so, because otherwise we probably ruined it for
you. But obviously there's a lot to talk about in this film. There's so many layers, there's so many connection points. Are there points that we miss? I thought we did a pretty good job of unpacking this, but I'm sure we missed something. What did we miss? Feel free to comment in the comment box below. And also, James and I are on social media, so follow us on Twitter or Instagram. And again, those links can be found in the info boxes below. James?
Yeah, if you've seen any of Benson and Moorhead's other films, I mean, there aren't that many. There's about sort of 4. But if you have seen any of the others, which is your favorite? Which should Steve watch next? Do let us know, let him know in the comments below. And who knows, maybe we might cover them in a future episode.
It'd be fantastic. Till next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.